In the wake of World War II, George Orwell writes 1984 as a dystopian warning. The novel is set in Oceania, which is one of the three world superpowers, the other two being East Asia and Eurasia. The society of Oceania is hierarchical, containing the inner party as the upper class, outer party as the middle class, and the proles as the lower working class. The novel's protagonist, Winston Smith, works for the outer party, yet throughout the novel he questions the doctrine of his superiors, which is a crime. Oceania is a totalitarian society in which propaganda, fear, and torture are used to keep the class structure stable. The party, however, will not execute people without converting them to their beliefs, allowing for no rebel martyrs. The party's main goal after the incarceration of its citizens is re-education and to instill love for Big Brother, the party's omnipresent leader. In order to explore the political issue of totalitarianism, Orwell utilizes figurative devices of irony and paradox, symbolism, and foreshadowing to ultimately illustrate how such a regime systematically erodes truth, individuality, and human connection to maintain absolute power over society. Orwell uses irony and paradox in the party's slogans: war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength, allowing the party to get away with certain actions under the mask that it is the contrary. The figurative language helps the reader understand the level of evil that the party is actively living out against its own people. By equating war with peace, the party consumes technological advances as fuel for the military-industrial complex. By branding freedom as slavery, it criminalizes thought, and by crowning ignorance as strength, contradiction becomes the unquestionable truth. The irony and paradox stretches further to the name of government institutions such as the Ministry of Truth. The novel's protagonist, Winston, works in the Ministry of Truth, where he fabricates historical records. The combined forms of irony and paradox show how totalitarian regimes can manipulate language and reality to suppress dissent. This contributes to the novel's warning that unchecked political power corrupts truth from the onset, setting a stage for a society in which its citizens are conditioned to accept contradictions as normal. Orwell's symbolism centers on three objects. First, Winston's antique journal, which he bought illegally, symbolizes his descent towards the party, not only because it represents life before the party, but also because of what he writes in the journal, such as "Down with Big Brother." The journal highlights Winston's internal struggle as he navigates through a society controlled by the party in its uniform thought, while maintaining his own personal narrative. Nevertheless, nothing is private in a totalitarian civilization. In the end, O'Brien, a high-ranking member of the Thought Police, reads the journal himself and punishes Winston for his heretical thoughts. Second, the glass coral paperweight, which Winston purchases from Mr. Charrington's antique shop, strikes him as a symbol from a lost, beautiful past and private world free from the party's control. Third, Winston overhears a red-armed prole woman singing. Despite being physically unattractive by the party's standards due to her weight and age, Winston refers to her as beautiful, believing himself and Julia to be the dead ones. In other words, she embodies everything Winston and Julia have lost and everything the party cannot destroy. Her vitality, fertility, and unwavering spirit stand in stark contrast to their doomed rebellion, furthering Winston's belief that true hope and authentic humanity remain only among the proles. By referring to her as beautiful, Winston views her as the only form of immortality achievable in a totalitarian society, not through rebellion, but through the quiet endurance of everyday life. Orwell's most chilling use of a literary device is foreshadowing, planted at the end of Book 1 and is harvested in the novel's final scene. In Book 1, Winston recalls spotting three infamous inner-party members, Jones, Aronson, and Rutherford, at the Chestnut Tree Cafe, sitting broken with glasses full of gin and a dead chessboard. As the telescreen sings, "Under the spreading chestnut tree, I sold you and you sold me." This image is not merely an idle memory, but becomes the culmination of Winston's spiritual metamorphosis. Similarly to the anecdote at the start of the novel, Winston sits in the Chestnut Tree Cafe, drinking gin and playing chess by himself. Suddenly, the telescreen blares the same lines as it did for the other criminals. However, this time it refers to Winston betraying Julia by screaming in room 101, "Do it to Julia, not me." According to O'Brien, Julia did something similar to Winston under the pressure of the various party torture methods. The transition from their physical love for each other to the physical harm showcases the contrast between individual and private life to the cruel and unusual punishment imposed by the state. Not only did they both sell each other out, but the final line, "He loved Big Brother," is evident of the symbolic rape of Winston's heart, mind, and soul. Once he had loved Julia with raw devotion and private passion, the party hollowed him out by replacing human intimacy with engineered worship. This fulfilled O'Brien's promise, "We shall squeeze you empty, and then we shall fill you with ourselves." The detailed foreshadowed descent reveals totalitarianism's ultimate horror, which is not crushing rebellion or erasing the truth, but rewriting one's soul, scripting betrayal and fake love as the only possible endings. If a premise for love is that it must be freely given, then the multitude of love shown for the state isn't truly love, proving that in such a regime, even one's heart becomes a tool manipulated by the state. Through irony, symbolism, and foreshadowing, Orwell exposes totalitarianism's methodical annihilation of truth, individuality, and love by transforming dissent into devotion. From the party's figurative language to Winston's final tears in the Chestnut Tree Cafe, each device illustrates a regime that doesn't merely govern, but owns the human soul. Therefore, 1984 endures as a warning that absolute power survives by erasing the self and replacing it with the state.